Nantucket Atheneum, the public library for Nantucket. And we're here for a conversation with Eileen Powers and about her art project called Can You Make Hair for Me? She's wearing one of her headpieces as we speak. And so I'm just, by way of introduction, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Eileen and me. We go way back. I think we've been friends maybe 22 years. We met at the Enquirer Mirror where Eileen was art director and I was features editor. And over the years, we've cleaned houses together. We've done print projects together. Eileen's a graphic designer. We shared an apartment for a while. And it's been a long and good relationship. And 3 years ago, in 2017, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a kind of blood cancer. And a year later, Eileen was diagnosed with lymphoma, a different kind of blood cancer. So, so our friendship kind of took a new turn, and we've now been walking this odd journey together through the treatment and post-treatment world of cancer. And it's so interesting to me that we have approached it very differently, as you can see. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about kind of where the idea came from, what it means for Eileen and for other people as well. So Eileen, along with being a graphic designer, is also a photographer. And so she had been doing a lot of photography prior to getting diagnosed, where is it fair to say that you were really interested in portraiture and street photography? Those were kind of your two areas?
Yeah, yes, I would say so. I studied with some fantastic street photographers and portrait photographers. And once I started to do that, it became, landscapes weren't important to me anymore. I really became interested in the people.
Right. And then all of a sudden you became the portrait, you became the subject. So this, Eileen, I don't know if you want to say a few words of welcome and introduction, but I think when we get to talking about your work, it would be a good time to start sharing and show people some of your work.
I'm Eileen Powers, and I created a collaborative art project called Can You Make Hair for Me? And the basic premise of the project is during chemotherapy, I lost all of my hair. So when you have chemotherapy, you lose all of your hair. You lose your eyebrows, everything. And the project, in the project, I invite people to make hair for me. And I'm wearing one of those right now. And I then sort of style and art direct that hair and photograph it into a series of portraits. So right now we have about 80 different portraits of different hair. And I make some of the hair and other people make hair. I've had family and friends make hair. I've had hair come to me from perfect strangers. I've had people leave cabbage and lettuce on my porch. So there's a variety of ways that the hair comes to me, but I promise everyone, if you make something or you give me something, I will try to make hair out of it the best I can. So there are various ways that the process works. So sometimes I'll get some pieces that might become hair. In this case, I have something that's fully executed and very easy to wear and really beautiful. And it's a variety. It just depends on what people feel comfortable with and where the idea goes.
Let's talk about how the idea came to you in those early days when you started treatment. When I lost my hair, I just wanted to put on a hat and I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want anyone looking at me. I just wanted to crawl into a hole. It was so painful to lose my hair. And you seem to have taken the opposite approach. You seem to have decided to embrace it. Well,
actually, what really happened was I lost my hair, and I think this was in January of 2019. When I had my first chemo treatment, and I had 11 treatments. And when my hair first started to come out, I decided to cut it. So I started by cutting it. And then at one point or another, it started to come out in chunks. So that's when it needed to be shaved. And that was very scary. And I felt completely out of my body. Like I didn't recognize myself. There were changes going on inside. There were changes going on outside. And it took me about 6 weeks to look in the mirror. It was very scary. But when I did, and then I sort of got used to what I looked like, and I got used to what I looked like without hair. It became, normal to me. It's a matter of acclimation. And then I looked at it as a potential. So here's something where I have a loss. What can I do to make that a positive? And I became oddly fascinated with my head, as an artist. As a portrait photographer, I was always looking for somebody who looked different. And now I was the one that looked different. So it was a natural progression for me to go from street photography to myself because, I was the interesting person in my home and I was quarantined. So I didn't really have a choice because
Right.
we become immune deficient. And in some cases, like Amy and I, we were both quarantined for many weeks after stem cell transplants. So you are very much, working with what elements you have around you as an artist. So that became the problem to solve in many ways.
And how did you hit upon the idea of making hair pieces?
Well, I started first by writing on my head and, just, trying to reflect things off my head and photographing that. And that didn't really work that well. And I sort of progressed to, well, what's the obvious? The obvious thing is I don't have any hair. And what could I fill that with? Well, I could fill it with a wig, or I could be more creative than that. And I think that I saw potential to make something interesting and something that would occupy my time, because cancer is a lot about waiting. You have a lot of time. And I wanted to try to use that time in a way that was positive and joyful and kept my mind occupied.
Well, I think this would be a good time for you to share some of your images with us, if you want to go ahead and do
I
that.
just want to say one more thing about it, is that I began inviting people in to make hair for me, because when you have cancer, people want to help you. And Amy and I had this discussion when I first got diagnosed. People really want to do something, but I think when it comes to cancer, we don't have the language to talk about it. And we also sometimes don't know how to help. And everybody wants to help. It's like, you go on the internet now and all we see is Mr. Rogers, the thing about the helpers, right? Everyone's posting that everywhere. Every time something bad happens, there's a helper, right? So I had lots of helpers, and I decided that I was going to take that group of helpers, and ask them to do something and give them an activity, because that was what was going to help me the most and help them. And it created a bridge of conversation and of activity between us. And I'm going to share my screen now. So can you see that?
I can, yep.
You can, excellent.
Here you are with kale hair.
Yeah, so this is one that I made. So occasionally I'll make the hair myself. And somewhere last summer, I was in Whole Foods, and I don't really like kale. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't eat kale. I don't like it. And I saw how beautiful this kale was. And we were already in the middle of the project, and I said to myself, I'm going to try that and see if it works. And it photographed much better than I expected it to. And it really is quite a flexible vegetable, I will say. You can use it in many ways. And we did cook it, and we did eat it in soup later on. We cleaned it, but it didn't go to waste. So all of the food that you see, most of it got eaten if I wore it on my head. Let's see. I want to share. It's a little bit tricky to do this, but I'm going to share a picture that I took of Amy when she was in treatment. So
yeah, this was a chemo day. I had been at Mass General in Boston and come down to the Cape to Eileen's house, and her model that day had a conflict and couldn't sit for her. So I agreed to, and it turned out to be pretty magical.
Yeah, we were at Calmus Beach in Hyannis, and all of a sudden this rainbow came out. But the thing is, this was probably a year before I got diagnosed. So here I am talking to Amy about what she had been going through. And I was one of those people that didn't have the right language to talk about cancer because I didn't understand it. And I look back at this picture, and that's what I see now. I see, you know, there's so much has changed for both of us between then and now. And it was a real education for me. And it was very helpful to have Amy to guide me through this process, because cancer is very complicated.
And what I love best about this picture is that my hat and my socks match the chair.
Match the chair. And we had purchased that chair on the way to the beach. We went to the Christmas tree store. I didn't have a chair. I'm like, oh, well, we got to stop and get this chair. Or I purchased it at some point during the day. So I had it in the car, but it worked out really well. But one thing I would like to mention is about pot roast. And when you have cancer, people want to feed you. And this is just a little cancer tip I give to people who might not know. But when you go through chemotherapy, most of the time you're nauseous and you can't eat anything. And your sense of smell and your sense of taste changes dramatically. And it's not uncommon for someone who goes through chemo or any cancer treatment to lose a lot of weight because they simply can't eat. So I received a lot of pot roast, which I was grateful for, but I couldn't eat it. And so part of the project was born out of opening my freezer and seeing all this food and thinking to myself, wow, all of these people have all this energy and they want to help. What can I give them to do? And as a type A person, I really wanted to give them an activity. So that, you know, once I started to get cards and gifts and flowers and food, I decided I wanted to redirect that energy into something that was positive and collaborative and fun for both of us, all of us. And we can look at some pictures now if you like, Amy.
Yes, let's do that.
So this is the very first picture from the series. And this was made by my friend John, and it's completely made out of pottery. And I should probably do this full screen. Give me a second. And where am I? Full screen. And let's see if we can all see that. There we go. Can you see that, Amy?
Yep.
Okay. And John was the very first person to jump on this idea. And he made this in his studio out of clay. And all of the spaghetti looking, the hair that you see is made from taking the clay and putting it through a spaghetti maker. And then, you know, he glazed it and fired it. So this is a pretty elaborate piece of art that he made for me. And when I put it on my head, I think it probably weighs about 5 or 6 pounds. But it also photographed much differently than it looks in life. It photographs better, and most of the time they do. They photograph really beautifully. Anything that's lit really well, you know, usually photographs well. And let's see. Uh-oh, hang on. Technical difficulty. This is your favorite, Amy, huh?
I think so. Let's see.
Can you see it?
No, it's still on the pottery one.
Okay, let's try again. Sorry, everyone. This is always tricky. Can you see them? No.
Not yet.
I'm going to do a new screen share. How about now?
Now I see the rubber band hair.
Okay, so the rubber band hair was made by Rosie Austin, who lives, and I have it right here, who lives close by to me. And I knew her through my running club. And she made this fabulous piece out of all of these different rubber bands. And one of the things that people ask me about is like the construction. And she took a cap that you would use to frost your hair with, one of those hair kits. and used the holes in it and pulled all of the rubber bands through. So there are varying ways to make hair. The one thing that I tell people is that it should not be a hat. The final execution should not be a hat. It should always look and act like hair.
There we go. This is the one I like.
So this is another piece that came early in the project, and it's made by Stanley Atwood, who is a good friend. He and his wife Tina are good friends of mine, and he is an artist, but he's also a contractor. And I believe he had spare copper in his basement, and so he fashioned this out of real copper, and it's soldered together. And he had the wire, and he made the ponytail, show it from the front. And it's really extraordinary. He also made eyebrows for me and accessories. There were earrings and a necklace. The final pictures ended up not being ones where we had those, but they were hard to keep on. It was hard. It was very tricky. So sometimes there's some engineering behind the hair, and sometimes you get pieces and you can't quite figure out how to keep them on your body. But it's absolutely beautiful, and it's heavy too. It's another very substantial piece.
And there's a lot of copper makeup in this shot as well.
Yeah, so when I got this, so sometimes I'll get a piece and I'm not sure what to do with it, and I try to envision it in some way. And sometimes it takes me weeks to figure out what to do with it. But in this case, this is in the beginning of the project, and obviously, cancer is a lot about stillness. It's a lot about handing over control to someone else. And through this project, what I wanted to do was hand control over to someone else in one sense by having other people make hair, but then gain that control back by the way I photograph it and the way I style it. So when I got this piece, I immediately thought, well, I just want to be a statue. I want that stillness, because you don't really know what's happening. You have a schedule when you have cancer. You're highly scheduled, which is, people find that hard to believe, but the schedule is actually very lulling. And I think with this piece, I just really wanted to show that stillness. Let's see. It's really quite beautiful. And let's see what we have next. And you can see this one. This is obviously, these are paint swatches that you get at Benjamin Moore or Sherwin-Williams. And this was made for me by one of the Leslie students, one of the expressive art graduate students. And this was fabulous. It came to me, and again, in terms of construction, it's sort of taped together. It's very fragile. I was going to wear it tonight, but I'd have to kind of put it back together. And I got it and I looked at it. I'm like, I'm not sure if this is going to work. And then I sort of retaped it, and voila, it photographs beautifully, and was such a surprise. And I was so grateful to get this. And it was one of the lightest pieces that's been on my head, because some of them are really heavy. And the lollipop comes from a whole nother pair that I had. So someone made one out of candy. I don't know if I have that coming up. Oh, I love this one. There's a retro quality to a lot of the photographs that I make. And part of that is my love of 50s, 60s, and 70s advertising. And I just love that old advertising and here I am washing my dishes. Let me see if I see myself in that dish, kind of thing. And I love that idea. And
You're soaking in it.
You're soaking in it, yes. Or you just don't squeeze the shard in. I mean, I love that sort of crazy advertising. And I also like the aesthetic. So I kind of bounce between different aesthetics, but this is definitely one of those that was retro. And, I hate washing dishes, so it was not hard for me to be the disillusioned, I imagine, housewife washing my dishes. So. And this was, I believe, made by Sophie McLaughlin. Really beautifully done. And in this case, I flipped it the other way around. I think Sophie intended that I wear it with the sponges in the front, but you kind of have to figure out its beauty angle. And,
right.
And it's just like advertising, like, when you'd photograph a car, there's always a beauty angle. That was always like the term used by all those photographers. And in this case, you do kind of find the beauty angle for the piece. Oh yeah, so this is where that lollipop came from. So this is all made out of licorice and pieces of hard candy and lollipops. And I used to, this is one of those that's inspired by someone I actually knew. So many of the pieces are characters. And growing up, I knew this young, I had a playmate on the Cape named Janie, and Janie used to put her long hair in her mouth, and she used to suck on it. And I still remember that to this day. And so this is an homage to Janie. Let's see, what do we have next? Oh, this is a beautiful piece. So another aspect of the project is high fashion. So I both love fashion and I hate fashion. And I think what I try to do is tread a fine line between, what might be mocking couture, but actually really loving couture, because I love Richard Avedon, and I love his photographs. But when I got this piece, and this also came from Lesley University, this was made by Professor Era Parker, and it's beautifully done. It's made with reindeer moss and leaves, and it's very fragile. I was going to wear it tonight, but it's kind of coming apart. But when I put it on my head, I mean, it looked like something on a runway, like that you would see in Paris or you'd see in New York. And it just seemed to me like just so high fashion. And then I decided to wear the bag that it came in.
Is that a Target bag?
Yeah, so it came in a Target bag. And I just love the Target bag. And I thought it was so funny. And where I live there, we have hunting. And when we shot this, it was after hunting season, but I've always find hunting season rather disturbing. And I call this piece hunting season because of the nice bullseye from the Target logo. But thank you, Era, if you're here. I absolutely love this piece. Oh, so this is another one I think that that also came from Lesley. I had a large number of them. And when this came to me, it had a brim on it. So again, like you try to reimagine sometimes what the pieces can be. You look for the potential in the materials. And that's also part of the wellness process, right? So you're actively, having chemo, or you're getting a stem cell transplant. And here I am working on different materials, but it really helps your mind to think through a different kind of problem. And I think on some levels, you're thinking through this visual problem, but it's allowing another part of your brain to solve other problems while you're distracted with this art problem. And so this one came in, and to me it looked like a cake immediately. And I took the brim off of it because that made it really look like a wedding cake or some kind of cake. I don't know. And I just, this was my birthday, and I just covered myself with frosting and got some candles. So.
Oh, that's frosting. I was thinking it was whipped cream.
No, it's frosting. It's the kind that you get in a little tub. It's like one of those tubs of frosting, and it's the confetti one. Although you can't really see it, it just looks lumpy. But I just love this one because, again, like, this is like, could it be high fashion? Strange things happen on the runway. But it just has like this strange allure to it. It's both, it's like, I call it the birthday girl. It's sort of the unhappy birthday girl.
It feels haunting to me, a little haunting.
It's one of my favorites. And this was later in the shoot. Sometimes, we get the right, Tom, who's here somewhere, shot the bulk of the pictures in this project. And all of the hair makers are invited to take the pictures if they like to. But most of the time they leave me the hair and they run away. So Tom has taken this. So this is one of the ones that Tom's taken as well. So this is made by a grandmother and a granddaughter, and they sort of cobbled this together. And when I got it, with some, has lavender sticking out of it. And again, like, this comes from that genre of high fashion. Is it a hat? Is it hair? What exactly is it? And am I mocking fashion? Am I not? And, again, I try really hard to tread on that line where it's a little bit of both. So If you can't tell, this is made of pipe cleaners. And a high school friend of mine made this for me. And she's made 2 different hair heads for me. We'll see another one a little bit later. But this was just fabulous. It's a highlighted and low lighted sort of hair that looked fabulous when it was photographed. Again, this is a piece that I held in my hand and I said to myself, I'm not sure if this is going to photograph well. And it did, and it photographed beautifully. And I used my, and I used my own hairbrush that has hair stuck in it. And I used it obviously because I had no hair. And I didn't bother cleaning my hairbrush because I really wanted that sort of echo of what so this does have my real hair in it and fake hair. So I like that I like the duality about this one.
This is another one of my favorites.
So what do you like about this one?
It's very mysterious. And I think it's in part because your face is, it's not prominent, it's kind of behind this cascade of wires, but I also think it's so clever. It's such a great idea for a headpiece.
Yeah, so this is made out of guitar, banjo, and bass strings. And a friend of mine that I went to graduate school with, he and his wife, Mark and Gretchen, went around to musicians. He's a musician, and they went around to the musicians in Louisville, and they had them donate strings so that they could make this hair for me. And it weighs about 10 or 12 pounds. And what they did was they sort of pulled the strings through a piece of window screen, and the window screen is sort of cut so that it just sits on my head, and they lined it with a piece of sweatshirt. And, you think about this in terms of this project. Now, I didn't ask them to do this. I gave them the suggestion that I would love for them to make hair for me, or I gave everyone that suggestion. So I feel so lucky that I was a catalyst for someone else making this and having conversations and being creative and being active, participating in an activity with others and getting all of these other people involved. So I think that's really the beauty of the project. And I think this is one of those pieces that really shows that. And this is like, to me, this is sort of another high fashion David Bowie kind of piece. I really love this one. So this one is Miss Birch Bark. And some of them have names. Most of them have names. And sometimes I change the names. But this was also made by Allison, who made the pipe cleaner hair. And she just took a walk in the forest here in the Cape near her house and just picked up all of these things. And again, in terms of construction, she took a sleeve, I think it's a sleeve or a shoulder of a shirt, and cut that out and fashioned it. And it's amazing, like what people think of and how they get these pieces to stay together. And it's beautiful. It has a little curl on the back. I think do I have another view of it? No, I only have one view of it. But it has a piece of birch bark that curls back, and it's absolutely beautifully done. And it smells great. So sometimes I get these and they smell really good because they're made out of, lavender, candy, birch. So it's sort of an experience for me as well because I get to smell them.
I'm glad to hear they smell good.
Yeah, they smell good. This is by a local artist, Cape Cod artist, Jen Stone. And she is a fiber artist and makes beautiful sculptures out of fiber. And a lot of times she'll find the fibers or she'll hand dye them. And she made me this elaborate, beautifully done knotted piece that just sort of sat perfectly on my head. And she also made earrings. When we do these shoots, we take lots of pictures. And right now I'm sort of just showing you just single selections from the whole project. But, there are big earrings that went with this. She made cuffs for this. It was absolutely beautiful. And I loved wearing it. And Jen took the pictures of this. So she was one of those hair makers who decided that she really wanted to take the pictures as well. Hi, Sue. Sue's out there. Sue and my mom are watching, I think on YouTube. My sister made this for me. And my sister lives in Provincetown. And I am, we all, we've all been to like some sort of bad seafood restaurant, right? We've all been to some cheap restaurant. So I sort of like imagine like this is like the mermaid who just like, who goes to Red Lobster, and just really just, is out of place and angry and can't get her lobster. So she found this piece, this is pieces of netting that she found in Provincetown. And there are jingle shells in it, and it makes noise. So some of them smell really good, some of them make noise, and this one sort of jingles as you wear it. And I get most of my accessories from the dollar store, along with my makeup, by the way. It all comes from the dollar store. Everything comes from some place that's bargain basement for this project.
This one looks very realistically like actual hair, the way it falls.
Yes,
and
it acts
there's a
like
part.
hair. You can kind of move it around. And I love when I get a piece that I can move around.
Right.
Now, this one was made by one of my, I was in an MFA program at Leicester University, and this was made by one of the students there. And while I would consider this a hat, I really loved this. It's made of suede. In other views, you can see the front of it, and it's got foam in it. But this is a good jumping off point for metaphor. I think when anyone has cancer, you can't escape a militaristic metaphor. And while I don't feel that those really suited my experience, I still hear them, and they're used all the time. And I would urge people, if you're talking to someone and you're mentioning their battle with cancer, that maybe you should think twice about that language, because it's not really a battle, not in my experience. I don't know how you feel about that, Amy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when people would say you're a warrior or you're my hero, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel good. It was like, I'm just trying to get through this. I'm just trying to take it one step at a time, and I'm doing what anybody would do. So yeah, we need to find a different word.
Yeah. So take this as another cancer tip from a cancer survivor. Really think about the language that you use when you speak to someone, because those battle metaphors they're dated, and they don't really suit the situation. And if you can't think of something to say, just ask, how's your cancer treatment going? That works really well.
And one thing I was surprised to discover in my first year is that cancer treatments and the way doctors are approaching cancer is just changing at lightning speed. And it's not like, I thought of every movie I had ever seen that had cancer in it, love story and all that. And my experience was not like that. It's like, it's going to be for you more like having a chronic illness, and it's just different.
It's different. And I think that our language hasn't caught up with the medical advances in cancer.
Yeah. And they're happening at lightning speed, so it's hard to keep up.
Yes. And this is a fabulous piece. I love this piece. And this was made by Steve Hall. And Steve Hall was in my cohort at Syracuse at graduate school. And it's orange in honor of our Syracuse connection. And it's made out of a swim cap. And he's used orange tape to tape like this. I don't know where he got this like orange plastic spaghetti material from, but it's fabulous. And I could throw it around and it would stay on my head, and I could turn around. And this is another one that's from earlier in the project. And it's just another one to me that's like a sculpture. And it's made out of such simple materials. And the one thing, I call this Orangina. And the one thing I want to say about this, and I don't know, Amy, this is just kind of an aside about also having cancer, is that when I was getting chemo, a number of my chemo treatments were inpatient, but there were a few that were outpatient as well. And this woman I'm at Mass General Hospital, and this woman comes in, and I'm hooked up to the machines, and I'm not feeling so good. And she sort of says to me, "Would you like a necklace?" And I'm like, "Who are you?"
I met her.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm giving out necklaces to the cancer patient. And I'm thinking to myself, is that appropriate? But it didn't matter because I was in the middle of this project. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take a couple of necklaces. And so this is one of the necklaces that she made. And as a volunteer, went around to all of the chemo, what do we call them? Chemo labs? I don't know. What do we call them? Where we get chemo.
Infusion?
Yes, the fusion labs, and would hand them out to people. So I was both horrified and pleased to get my necklaces.
I think I got earrings. I believe I got earrings.
And they came in handy. So I thank her. I don't remember what her name was. Now, this is another by Steve Hall. So Steve Hall, just really creative with this project, and found a bicycle helmet in his garage. We should all have materials in our garage that we can use, right? I think we all do. And then took pipe insulation or swimming noodle material and made this. And so this is kind of like, to me, another outer space 50s kind of, you could hear some sort of Esquivel music in the background, very space age. I just absolutely love that aesthetic. And I think this was just so much fun to wear. And we work in a very small space. You know, it looks like I have a studio, but I really don't. It's, you know, it's a very small space with that's been painted gray. And we could barely get this whole headpiece in using a 50mm lens. So
use it for social distancing.
Yes. And I have this one, and sometimes when I speak, people like to try this one on. It's a lot of fun. Another one from the forest. So this one I made out of reindeer moss. I was hiking in the forest, and you know, your urge to exercise when you have cancer, and I did a lot of walking, and my dog found these sunglasses while we were on the trail. So, and if you look in there, where I'm a no Photoshop kind of person, I really want
see Tom. Yeah, I can see Tom.
Have the least amount of Photoshop as possible. So what you're looking at are usually ones that have been color corrected, but we've not done anything. I've not done anything else to these pictures. I may have cleaned up like stray pieces of things that were falling off. But you can see Tom. And again, you know, you think of somebody like Richard Avedon, I think, where you could see a ring light, you know, in people's eyes if you looked really closely in the magazine. So that's sort of just a little homage to the photographer. Ramen noodles. We did not eat these after this was shot. Ramen noodles, who knew that starch could make such great hair? Because once you cook the noodles, they stick together. And you mold it in different ways. And at first it was a big mess, but once it started to dry, I could kind of move it around. And she looks like a character on The Americans. There's a young woman on The Americans, and this hair just reminded me of her. So I think she's the character in this. So these are curlers made from letterpress pieces. So a friend of mine, Richard, is a letterpress artist, and he when you're warming up the press, you get a lot of waste at first. So he took those pieces and cut them and then fashioned them into curlers for me. And I absolutely love this. And this is a vintage scarf that I got at the thrift store. And I can't think of the designer's name. She's a German designer, and her work was really popular in the 70s. And so I was really thrilled to find this. Vera, I think that's her name.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The gas tanks in Boston are painted by Vera.
Oh no, those are no, not by Vera. No. Those are by I know who they're by. Vera was a textile designer.
Oh, okay.
And her logo was a little tiny ladybug. And so these scarves and things like that have become really popular, and Target is now making stuff with the Vera designs from the 70s. But I found a real one, so that was kind of cool because my third grade teacher used to wear Vera. Anyway, next, let's see what else I've got here. So this is asparagus. You could probably tell that. So asparagus was so great to work with. It stays in place. You can get it, it looks like hair. And I just love this one because it again is retro, but there's something kind of mysterious about it too. And those sunglasses came from the dollar store, I think. So this was made for me by a woman in Kansas City who also had a form of lymphoma. And she saw the project and she found out about it through a friend of mine. And she made me this beautiful piece out of gift ribbon. And so I could take it and I could curl it, and it was really long and really beautiful. And I have a couple of these. One was made by the woman in Kansas City, and then I have another one that's red, white, and blue that was made by some friends of mine locally here on the Cape. But it was so much fun to you put these things on and all of a sudden you become a character. That's the other part of it is, you don't know what you're gonna bring to it, but you don't know what it's gonna bring to you when you start to wear these things. So this is film, and it's exposed film. And I love this one as an example of the project being a catalyst. So, this was made after a family discussion at a dinner table. They knew me, they wanted to see what they could make, what they had at home, and the whole family joined in and had a conversation. And then one of them went off and made this hair. And I just love this. And I got it, and it's attached to a fleece cap. So it's really comfortable to wear. And then I had that cap, that's my own cap, in the back of my closet. I've had it since the early 90s, I think. And I got this dress at the thrift store. And again, like high fashion, I imagine I am that, tourist in Paris who just can't seem to put her camera down, and everything is so fascinating. So
what are the images on the negatives? Did you look at them?
It's actually kind of lovely. They're family images. You can see, I think I saw cars, I could see people. And, I love that there's that sort of, dimension to this, right? So it's, that's a whole family story there in film. And, and it's been taken and it's been repurposed and recycled into something else. So, and that's a lot what, what this project is about.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and you can curl it. That's another thing with film is it's very malleable. So you can make it flip, you can do lots with it. It's really, really fabulous. Oh, we've got another kale. So this is me. I consider myself as like Daisy Buchanan when I'm wearing this from The Great Gatsby. I just love the dress, and I just love the kale, and she's just so disconnected. I love that. Where's my wine? Oh, this is a great example of one that was sort of a collaboration between different materials. So the hat portion is made by a woman who has breast cancer, and she was in New York City, and she went to different laundromats and got dryer lint, and then put this together for me.
So the hat is dryer lint?
Yes, it's dryer lint. And it's beautifully done, and it's very warm. And I think this was shot last August. And this is a really good example of where, I might get something from someone and it comes packed in something really interesting. So I got a piece made by someone, and they packed it in this pink tissue paper. So I just sort of took that and combined it with this particular piece because I like the pinks. But, it was just so great to see like somebody take this material that you probably would just throw away and never think about, and fashion it into something like that. I don't know how she did it.
Oh, because that was my next question. It's like, how did you make all that dryer lint?
I can't quite figure out how she did it. It's beautifully done. I could wear it today, and it's still like in one piece and beautiful. Oh, this one's great. So Pandora Peoples has a radio show here on Cape Cod at WOMR, and she came to my house with these petals. This was around Valentine's Day. And she took tinfoil and covered them in fabric. And they're all individual. So then I sort of took them and started molding them, because you could turn them and twist them and make them into something. And she did my makeup and she photographed me. So this was one of those where, you know, the hair maker really wanted to get involved, and anyone's invited to do that. You can always, you know, come and take the pictures if that's what you'd like to do.
And we should say you have 80 and you're hoping to end up with 100 by the end of the project.
So if you're thinking about making hair, now is a great time to do that. I will wear anything that someone makes for me. So I'm excited to get new hair. It's a little bit harder now because I can't really get clothes to wear, but soon I hope to be able to. So, but make hair, make joy. It's a lot of fun. And this is another one by my sister. My sister is a pastry chef. Hi, Sue, and if you're out there. And this is meringue. I don't know if you can tell what it's made out of.
On your head?
Yes. And
Wow.
It has such a, Archie comic Betty kind of feeling to it, right?
But isn't meringue really fragile? Wouldn't it just shatter?
Sue made a special kind of meringue and piped it onto my head and then sort of pulled it. It was also kind of malleable and just sort of made this hair out of it. And what you don't see in this picture is we had made cookies that looked like lymphoma. They were different lymphoma cells, white cells and lymphocytes and things like that. And I'm eating one of them. And so the in other pictures, you can actually see the cookies, but I love this one because it's so unexpected. Like, you know, and I don't have a lot of blondes. So if you're thinking about making hair, that would be great. Another blonde would be really fun. Oh yeah, there are the cookies. So there's my doctor right in the middle. It's hard to see. There's some platelets and some lymphocytes. Excellent. And they tasted great. This is my third grade teacher, Mrs. Fox. I went to this crazy school in Yonkers, New York, where all of our teachers wore really elaborate makeup and wore wigs. Now, has anyone had that experience in grammar school? Well, we did. And she had this crazy black bouffant that she would wear. They were all very dramatic and usually wore tons of makeup. But this is a scarf that was cut up into different pieces and kind of fashioned together and glued to my head with theatrical glue. So it's sort of like a little page boy. And it's just fabulous. It's just, you know, another one that's sort of like high fashion. I love this one. Oh, this is made for me by an Instagram friend. And it's all tape. It's all cassette tape. And she had a lot of it left over. And she glued it to some sort of base. I think it might be a swim cap. I'm not quite sure. But it was just this long thing. And it was all connected to the actual cassette. So, you know, I had to kind of break that apart because it's really long and I'd walk in it and I'd get all kind of, you know, while we were doing the shoot, I was tripping and kind of getting caught in it. But it's beautifully made and it's a lot of fun. And I borrowed that Led Zeppelin t-shirt from my brother.
Yeah, you get the rock and roll spirit happening here.
Yeah, it's a little Joan Jett. It's like, I want to be Joan Jett. So this is from Christmas time. And I'm the elf that can't straighten her hair. I desperately want to have straight hair and I just can't do it. This was made for me by a friend in Connecticut this is a more ribbon, but it's a whole different view of the ribbon. And it's so much fun. And I have this one upstairs and I let people wear it. Sometimes kids come over and, you know, they can put it on. It's so much fun. And there are all these little bows in it. But, you know, this one too, it photographed really beautifully. And it was fun to be an elf. And it was fun to, it was just, you know, so festive. I really love this one. Oh, so I don't know if all of you are familiar with the Kindness Rox Project. Megan Murphy here on the Cape started this project where there are rocks in the woods, and they say inspirational sayings and things like that. It's very similar. I feel she's a kindred spirit to me. So she made this piece for me with Kindness Rox made out of styrofoam. And it's just great. And at that time, I didn't have a lot of eyebrows, as you can see. So I don't know, Amy, if you went through that too, where you're kind of struggling without eyebrows.
My eyebrows hung in there, I have to say.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's good. That was really scary. It's kind of frightening to see yourself without eyebrows. You don't get used to that. So what is this? This is cabbage. This is the creepy uncle. I call him Uncle Dupree. He's like the creepy relative that shows up at holiday parties, drinks too much, says inappropriate things, and wears a terrible holiday sweater. I bought this sweater at the thrift store, and while I was, and it's enormous. I think it's like an XXL. And the woman, who's the volunteer, she's checking it out, and she's like, "What are you gonna do with this?" And I said, "I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna show you." But it was this crazy sweater, and then I realized that this could have belonged to a friend of mine who had this exact same sweater. I had a friend point out that this sweater has circulated through Christmas parties here on the Cape, and it might very well be that sweater. Oh, this one. So when you're having treatment at MGH where we were treated, you are so lucky to have people come and visit you. There are art therapists and music therapists. There are regular physical therapists that come and make sure everything's okay. And Kelsey, who is an art therapist at MGH, gave me a pile of beautiful paper. And I brought the paper home and I made this from the paper that she gave me. And this is based on a Leslie student that I saw, somebody on campus. And, I kind of fashioned it based on just a memory of this person I saw walking across campus. We've got a lot of redheads in the project.
Well, they photograph well.
Yeah, they do. The color's great. So Patty, who made this for me, Patty has made, I think, 3 or 4 pieces for me. And this one, she also donated that cabbage, and she left this lettuce on my porch. And it's so funny, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with this? This is lettuce. Like, how is this going to work? But, you take time and you problem solve, right? This is what this project's about. And you just start taking pieces of it apart, and you see what its character is. And that's what's really interesting. This is not a material I would normally work with. So it's fabulous to kind of figure out a way to make this lettuce work. And, here's another example of another retro sort of style, person. And I call this one the mono eater, because this one is the friend of Uncle Dupree, who shows up at the Christmas parties and is either uninvited or drinks too much. Well, this is that person that we all know who's like I'm only eating green food, or I'm only eating yellow, or today I'm only eating white food. So this is that person that we all meet, and they turn into the food that they eat.
Ooh, beautiful.
Yeah, this one's great. So I don't know if you can tell what that is. It's probably not easy to tell. It's a child's tutu. It was handmade. It's from a little girl, and her mom gave it to me. And I didn't know quite what to do with it. But then, you put these things on your head and they have a life of their own. So this is just so fabulous to work with. It's almost like working with like being a fiber artist. You're kind of taking these pieces and you're moving pieces around to see how they photograph and see what angles work best. And this one was just light, didn't leave any dents in my head. Some of them leave dents in your head, but this was just so much fun to work with and so easy to get a beautiful picture with. um, corn husks. So my friend Tina lives in Western Mass, and there's a lot of corn in Western Mass. And she made me like a crown out of corn husks. And typical of the project, like I say, I will wear anything that someone makes for me, but I sometimes reimagine it. So I wore it as it was intended, sort of as a crown, but then I flipped it upside down and made it backwards. And it just becomes a whole different person when you do that. It's like some sort of crazy Farrah Fawcett kind of thing. So again, you have to look at things in different ways. And it's so much fun to be able to do that, to take something and flip it upside down and see what happens. This is the sassy secretary that I used to work with at my very first job. I think we all probably know somebody in the workplace who is underemployed, who's too smart for their position, knows a lot, and is just so bored by what they have to do. And this one is really interesting because it's on wire. It's the ticker tape is sort of kind of woven through this wire base, and it's very light, and it's another one that I could move around. And so I had this dress, and I had bought this dress at the thrift store. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to use this for, but something will come along. And it was sort of the perfect sort of 80s kind of look. And I don't know if you know this, but the internet is a wonderful place. You can translate anything into shorthand. And I had somebody on Instagram actually was able to translate that on their own because they knew shorthand.
What does it say?
That's a secret.
Oh.
It's a secret, but you can probably find out. Oh, and here's another view, because that belt is so fabulous, right? So, you go to the thrift store or you go to the Goodwill, and you just want to know, like, who is the person who had this, and where were they wearing this belt, and what life did this belt have before it came to me? I'm sure it was much more interesting than the things that I did, but it was, so over the top. And that necklace is mine. So sometimes the pieces belong to me. Oh, another Leslie student. This is a combination between a Leslie student and a young woman that I would see waiting for the bus here on the Cape. So I'd be driving somewhere in the morning, and I'd see this teenager with the most amazing ennui. Oh, everything's horrible, and here's my blue hair, and I'm so bored with you. Who are you? I'm bored with you. And it was sort of that kind of thing.
What is the blue thing that makes the hair?
It's a scarf. It's a very fancy scarf that is tucked into my head, but these were the ends of the scarf. So it's kind of this crazy sort of like deconstructed. It's woven in the middle, which you can't see. And this is the fringe on the end. So it kind of looks like a blue cocker spaniel or something. and so Tom found this. So this is one of Tom's creations. Found this at the thrift store for me.
Right.
Same day, same thrift store, another scarf. Scarves are great. You can actually brush them. So I sort of brushed this one out before I put it on my head. And this is kind of my homage to I Love Lucy. To me, she's sort of a Lucille Ball kind of character. And I think it's always more interesting when the characters are doing something, and when they can, when they have an activity or they have a thought. And when I'm in front of the camera, sometimes I don't know, but I always ask myself, I'm like, okay, who is this person and what is this person doing? And I think that really helps you to kind of ground you and come up with a personality for the accessories that you're wearing.
Right. So they don't wear you.
Right. So they don't wear you. And that's a big part of it. And the challenge of putting on false eyelashes, let me tell you, I do not have the facility with my hands to put those on. So yeah, they are falling off, but then I made that part of the character. But the makeup is a challenge. It can be a real challenge. oops. It's a plastic meat. Now, who would have thought of this? Well, my friend James thought of this. And James and I went to high school together, and he's a novelist. And I got this package of plastic meat, and I put it on my head, and it came with earrings, bacon earrings. So it's all bacon. And I came up with this character because I can remember being at Yankee Stadium and losing my car one day and not being able to find it. And I was certain that I was on E2 when my car was actually like on D1 or something like that, right? So I also remember seeing somebody looking for their car that day too. And so to me, this is that woman who had her car keys, lost her car, is stuck in the parking garage, and just not happy with anybody.
Right.
One of the things I want to mention about the project is, the backgrounds are simple and are basic for a reason. The project mimics the cancer treatment process in that you give yourself over to somebody else who knows better than you, who's going to treat you. And in this project, I give myself over to other people who make things for me. But then I sort of gain that control back with how I fashion, the characters. But I purposely have the stark gray backgrounds because, cancer is very lonely. You do a lot of the treatment on your own, and you spend a lot of time waiting, and there's a lot of unknowns. And I really wanted my people to be isolated, and I wanted them to sort of reflect that part of the treatment. I don't know if you felt that way, Amy.
Yeah.
There are parts of it that are just very, that you make 1,000 decisions all by yourself. And, you're by yourself, and you need to learn to work with that. So the one that we saw earlier with the corn husks, my friend Tina had put this corn silk in the box with that. And I'm really fascinated sometimes with the packing material that comes with the actual hair. And so this was sort of at the bottom of the box, and I'm like, oh, I love that. And this was around Labor Day of last year. Labor Day. And I'm in Dunkin' Donuts, and there's a guy behind me, and he's obviously a tourist. And he's just, he can't stand still. He's fidgeting with his wallet. He needs some caffeine because he's probably like having some sort of fit in front of me, because he's moving around, he's wiping his face, and he's got this receding hairline. So this is the Labor Day guy. And Labor Day guy just, was indelible. I got to kind of turn around and look at him a few times. And I really thought that he was such a great example of what we see here when you live in a seaside community on a holiday weekend.
It's interesting to me that before cancer, you would have been trying to take his picture.
This is it. That's exactly it. Yes.
And now you're becoming him.
Yes, that's what I had to do. I think I had this need to make portraits and to go, and I couldn't go out. And so I had the hair that I initially thought other people would be wearing the hair. But I think I quickly realized that I needed to be the one who was doing it. And, from that, I created these characters that I absolutely would have I would have run after these people to take their pictures. And this is definitely one of those people and I didn't have a camera the day that I met him. I usually do, and I didn't. So these are shoelaces, and they are sewn together. There's a part sort of on the side, and it's sort of this piece that I kind of can move around, and it's very, very long. And my running buddy, Deb, made this for me. And it's, an homage to us getting up early in the morning and meeting at 5:30 and going for runs. And I put this on my head, and I thought, wow, this is so high fashion. So it's another, yet another piece that sort of echoes like something you might see on a runway. It's both mocking fashion and it's appreciating fashion at the same time. This is one of my first bosses. So I used to work in a drugstore, and I had this boss, and I'm a child of the 80s, and so we would have terrible 80s music on in the drugstore, and my boss really liked Taylor Dane. So whenever Taylor Dane came on, he would sort of do this sort of dancing thing. And he was probably only like 35 at the time, but he didn't have any hair. So I was in the dollar store and I made this one, and I found car mats. And I thought, well, there's got to be some way I can make this into something. So a good pair of scissors and some car mats, and you can make some hair. Yeah, there he is. There he is, very serious. That's the portrait. I'm the hardworking guy who manages the pharmacy. He also reminds me maybe of a hardworking accountant. I think of that too. This is his wife. So she's really tired of him dancing around and never taking her anywhere, and never buying her anything. So she's really annoyed with him all the time. So they make a fun couple. They're both made out of car mats. And that scarf is just so fabulous. That also came from the thrift store. So this goes back to, this is another running buddy. A couple of running buddies made this for me. And years ago, I had done a logo for a nonprofit that was about conquering cancer and using that language, beating cancer, conquering it, and that sort of thing. And when I got this piece, that's also part of it, is like, people like, they love to do like a victory sign to you. And I have to say, like, cancer doesn't feel like that at all. It really is a process. It's all also kind of systematic, the way it all works and the treatment works, that you really don't feel like that. But, I'll wear anything that somebody makes for me. And this is all made out of running metals. It comes from metals that you get when you run a 5K. And in this case, my friend wanted to take the pictures. So Rob and Stella. So Rob took the pictures and Stella directed me. And that's another way of collaborating too, is that I'm happy to take art direction from someone else if they want to come and do that. I'll wear it, I'll do the art direction, or you can tell me what to do. So this was a whole nother thing. So I was like kind of like a piece of clay, and they were sort of directing me and telling me what they wanted to do. So that was a whole new experience for me.
Hey, Eileen.
Yeah.
So one of the attendees is asking if you could just move the cursor out of the way.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
That's a good point. There we go. So this is made of straws, another sort of space age kind of thing. I love that whole space age thing. So I made this one. This was when straws, when we were starting to think twice about straws last year, was it? And how straws were ending up in the oceans and ending up in animals and things like that. So I gathered up all of these straws, and I decided I wanted to use them in a different way. So I made hair out of them. And it's sort of just one of those characters that's just completely fantasy. I don't know where she came from. And this way I was given for 4th of July. And this is another one made of ribbon. Ribbon is so easy to work with, and it always looks different. And I took this one and I wrapped it and I made a bouffant out of it. And I got that fabulous bathing suit at the consignment shop in Orleans. So it's a great place to get things. You can just go from one end of the Cape to the other and find really interesting clothes. And I urge you to do it, because it's an experience to go from each thrift store and each consignment shop, one after the other. It's a lot of fun.
This is one of my favorites.
Yeah, so this one is my nosy neighbor growing up. This one I made too. This came from things that were in Michael's, the store Michael's, in the bargain bin. And I saw this crazy, I don't know what you would use this beehive thing for, but crafty people find lots of ways to use things. And so maybe you unravel it, maybe you make something out of it. But it was a perfect bouffant. And it was right next to this pile of like cardinals and butterflies. So I grabbed a bunch of those. And my mother's, a friend of my mom's had an old phone, a really old rotary phone. And my next door neighbor had the longest phone cord I've ever seen. It went from her house all the way down the street. Like she could walk out in the middle of the street and keep an eye on the kids with this phone cord. And she was always chatting. So this is an homage to Mrs. Migden, my neighbor. And there she is again. And I love that this, I found this crazy top that looks like a phone cord. I love that the sleeveless, that element looks like a phone cord. And I think that's all I've got. I could spend all night showing you more, but that's all we have tonight.
No, I think that's good because it's almost 8:15 and we should see if anyone wants to ask any questions or have a discussion of any sort. But before we do that, we should mention that your images have appeared in a couple of exhibits and they are scheduled to appear in a few more coming up. They'll be in Paris this month, right?
Yes. There is an organization called Blossom Fighting Cancer, and this is their first exhibition, and it will be in Paris on September 3rd. And the mission behind Blossom Fighting Cancer is to show the work of artists who have either had cancer or are still in the process of being treated, and to give them exposure. So it's a fabulous opportunity for me.
And they'll also be in a Chicago exhibit in the fall?
Yeah, well, that'll be next fall. That'll be fall of 2021. Everything's been moved off. So I was in a show called Artoma, which again is a collective of artists who have had some sort of experience with cancer. At the time when I was in Artoma, I was still being treated. And that's going to be in Chicago in September of 2021. So that's a little ways off. But I would like to mention that we have a book in the works. So there's a coffee table book in the works for this project. And if you're interested in being, notified about when the book is going to come out, you can go to my website and you can just sign up and I can send you an email and let you know when the book is available. But
what's your web address? Is it eileenpowers.com?
It's canyoumakehairforme.com. And
very straightforward.
Yes. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, mostly Instagram. But more importantly, I'm really excited about the book and I hope you sign up for it. But I'm really excited about getting people to make hair for me. So if there's anyone out there that's interested in doing that, direct message me, or if you have an idea and you're not sure if it's going to work, I'm happy to help you with that and working through it. Or maybe you just you've got some materials around in your house and you don't know what to do with them. And maybe I can help you with that.
Right. Well, I'm not seeing any specific questions, although some great comments. So Alex Taylor says, we'll never forget Mrs. Fox's eyeshadow.
Yes, Mrs. Fox's eyeshadow, bright blue. Yeah, crazy stuff for third graders.
And then over on YouTube, Anthony Coletti says, Eileen Powers, you're such an inspiration.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in.
And Linda Sperry, who I believe is in California.
Hi, Linda.
Also sends a shout out.
Hi, Linda. Thanks for watching.
So in conclusion, what haven't we covered? What should we end on?
Well, I think that what my mission is to show people that through some form of expressive activity, they can solve problems, they can get through very difficult situations. And I feel so strongly that we all need to be active. So you can use expressive therapy techniques by making a garden, you can cook, you can make hair, right? You can do so many things. And I just feel strongly that we all need to continue doing things. And that's healthy and that's wellness. And that's how you get through something like cancer treatment. And by
Also,
collaborating and staying social.
and I think it also applies for the situation we're in right now in terms of self-quarantine.
Yes.
Sometimes it's hard to be creative when it feels like everything's falling apart, but it is very helpful.
And I do want to mention that, you don't need a lot to be creative. Limitations can be your best friend. Those limitations are going to make you think in different ways. They're going to make you flip a problem upside down and try something else. If you only have a set of 4 or 5 things, you're going to use what you have, and you can make that into something. And I really believe that you can make joy out of a bad situation, or out of cancer treatment, or out of anything.
Right. Well, thank you for making joy for me.
Thanks, Amy.
And thank everyone for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.